That has been quite interesting of late. We've had 3 days of gains, but today that's not to be, unfortunately. We are down, but sitting just below that 58,000 point mark. It does become psychological because, of course, we're aiming for that 60,000 point mark, and then hopefully we get to our record trading, and that will sort of stimulate a whole lot more trade as well. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in many instances. Industrials, however, not managing to do much better, despite Process getting that 18 billion rand that, of course, it got through that bond purchase, which certainly helps them, as they failed, unfortunately, to get Just Eat out of the UK and Takeaway.com instead being able to take that one away with them. Financials also headed down as the banking stocks didn't end in such good numbers even yesterday. Also continuing then on the commodity share front, well, the resources overall not necessarily doing too well, but the gold shares seem to have headed a little bit higher. The platinum counters have certainly run really hard of late, and the last year has seen them gain over 200%. The palladium and platinum shares, the PGM space, has certainly been the biggest gainers on that front, and that has managed to push the markets a whole lot higher, and that means we're seeing that price there go right up to nearly 70 rand, or rather 70 points, should I say, for the platinum index. Well, speaking of the platinum index, well, it is sufficiently down or up this morning, should I say. But for now, a quick check-in on your currencies. 14.38 for a US dollar. Yes, it is slightly weaker, but let's consider the fact that this sat at 14.43 for quite some time as well earlier on this year, considering the Iran and United States situation. But that's come off just a touch. Pretty much stable, though, in and around that mark. 18.77 for a British pound, so below 19 rand, still in 16.05 for a euro there too. Continuing to check in, as I said, the commodity space well above that $1,000 a fine ounce mark. So a massive gain. It's a big deal considering that it started the year at around $930 a fine ounce for platinum. That is now at $1,030, gaining massively so over the last few days as well. The oil price had continued to go down slightly up this morning, though, at $64.32 a barrel, having really averaged around $65 and even reaching, of course, 71 in the height of that Iran-United States situation, which plagued the market a little bit earlier on. Very quickly, this is a look at your BRICS countries. Some minor movements in a positive direction there, and certainly helping to quell the market. Let's unpack this story, though. It certainly has been the story that came out last night, and it's quite significant. Retrenchments coming out at Telkom. It's not necessarily the first time we've seen this, but it's a struggling company, and a company that, when it first came about and government decided to sell off that 60-odd% stake in the company, one would have thought this may be a move where government gets to gain and get some benefit out of it. And for the longest time, it certainly did. So we unpacked that market picture, and this is what Telkom has sort of looked like, particularly since 2003. That is the ultimate share price. So not necessarily the biggest gains, but this initially was a massive gain. And of course, we saw the global financial crisis in around 2008, 2009, which saw a whole host of companies really suffer. And then we saw a continued decline until 2013. And then, of course, new CEO comes on board and we get some changes happening at Telkom. It's a total restructuring. All of these sort of coincide as well with job losses at the entity. And then you see a pickup right through then to around 89 rand odd a share for Telkom. It sort of hovered in and around that mark, unable to get some firm footing, and then went and spiked. That's in June last year. If we go into the next graph, you'll see that that spike was in June last year, where we got the share price of Telkom peaking at around 99 rand and 50 cents a share. But ever since that mark, just last year, it's lost 65% of its value, and just before the opening of trade this morning was at 34 rand and 61 cents a share. As I said earlier, all of this coincides with some sort of retrenchment of sorts, and this is how we'll track that retrenchment then. Back in 1991, we saw Telkom's kind of sit with around 69,000 employees, and over the years, things have gotten worse. They've decided to aggressively come down with their employment structure. In the year 2000, sitting with around 50-odd thousand employees, then having clearly then cut around 10,000, if not 20,000 in that space of time. It's more aggressive, as you can see, towards 2005, so cutting even more employees in the less amount of time, and then continuing all the way down to around 2015. At this stage, We see around 7,000 odd employees join Telkom, but that's because Telkom had decided to merge with BCX, or Business Connection. Now that deal, which was worth around 21 odd billion rand, meant that a whole lot more employees joined the entity, and we saw that pick up ever so slightly. But ever since, it's continued to go down. All of these figures, of course, are available within Telkom's financial results over the years, and that's how we've continued to track them. A further 3,000 will see that number go down around 12,000 employees for Telkom, and it certainly goes down with the share price then, as you can tell. So things are certainly not necessarily that good. Let's chat to Chantel Marks now from FNB Wealth and Investment, and she joins us live from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Chantel, I just painted a really torrid picture there, as you can see, of things at Telkom. Is it still the great play we thought it was when things had gone up to around 99 Rand 50?
Yes, so I mean, when the share price rallied into June last year, we actually saw the mobile business break even for the very first time, and there was a lot of optimism around Telkom in that it would be able to mitigate losses in its fixed line business and supplement that with the mobile business, and really an improvement there. They were gaining subscribers quite quickly. The excitement kind of started dying down when talks emerged that they were looking to acquire SABC. SABC, of course, had a lot of debt on its balance sheet, and the market really did not like this prospect. Even though it would have given their mobile business quite a bit of scale, it would have added a lot of debt to Telkom. What happened then is that deal kind of went sour. Blue Label was not willing to come to the party, and SABC rejected the offer. Telkom decided to take a step backwards, and it just seems as if the sentiment around the stock has not recovered. Also, during that time, we had Telkom release results which showed that the fixed line business was moving backwards faster than expected. So there was always going to be a sort of structural change that would lead to a decline in fixed line, because no one has their Telkom copper wired phone and in their homes anymore, or certainly, well, I don't, and I would bet that you don't either, Arabile. But with that decline being faster than expected, the investment case kind of changed, because the narrative of mobile being able to supplement fixed line suddenly started looking a lot less probable. Okay, so we know then that it's going to be a shadow of itself. That's Telkom. It's going to obviously become a shadow of itself for quite some time now. So too will SABC. Look, they're both struggling. Does this mean that we may see the end of both? Because clearly here, in a market where you're seeing Vodacom making a play for SABC's contract customers, one wouldn't be surprised to see if MTN can't get the same deal on the other side. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for Vodacom to acquire those contract customers. I saw those rumors come out as well. From a competition perspective, though, if you consider the latest Competition Commission report into the mobile operators, it's such a concentrated market. So government and the regulators really do not want either Telkom or SABC to fail. Will Telkom fail? I think that's probably not going to happen. They still have a relatively strong balance sheet, and that fiber business is still quite solid. And the mobile business, even though it's still battling to gain scale, is a profitable business. Fixed line, even though revenue is declining, is still profitable. So they still have levers to pull, and there is still a business there, but it probably will look a lot different in a few years' time. With SABC, it's a strange one, because if they sell their contract customers, which is their most profitable part of their business, they're basically left with a prepaid customer base that is not very sticky at all. These guys will chop and change, or can chop and change very quickly when it comes to their service providers. When pricing comes down for Vodacom or MTN or Telkom, it's very easy to switch. Cell C is going to be left with low quality customers essentially, and also their ARPUs are quite low, so the average revenue per user for a Cell C prepaid customer is quite low. And then they have all this debt. So with Cell C, they're going to need someone to buy them. I'm just not sure who it's going to be, if not Telkom, because the Competition Commission probably won't like MTN or Vodacom doing it.
Massive deployment of funding of some sort. Righto, let's move on then to the airline space, and unfortunately one that has continued to falter and fail. SAA needing, of course, to be put under business rescue, promised 4 billion rand, 2 billion of that supposed to come from government. It's a no-show by the looks of things, and now they're set to sell 9 of their planes in that business rescue process. It just seems like SAA also is withering into nothing.
Yes, I mean, it was actually quite bizarre. There was an interview with Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, and he said that we must hold thumbs that the money for SAA is found in time. So I'm not sure if he's holding thumbs, what the rest of us should be thinking. But they really need that money. According to news reports, the money, the 2 billion rand that came from external lenders, has already been burnt through. They've spoken to unions. There's probably going to be an issue paying salaries if that government funding doesn't get through. I think with regards to the sale of the airplanes, I think that is part of the business rescue process, whereby they're just trying to strengthen the balance sheet a little bit. The company is absolutely drowning in debt, and selling airplanes and parts is probably an intelligent and smart way to remove some of that debt from the balance sheet, bring some cash into the business and put it in a healthier position, particularly if you consider the age of this fleet that they are actually selling. I saw it's between 13 and 16 years old, and one of the airline websites that I visited when I was researching the story actually indicated that they can't believe some of these planes are actually still flying, and they're flying to New York and they're flying to France. So it's actually long distance routes that these guys are completing. But certainly it's one way of strengthening the balance sheet, and I think that's probably what they're trying to do. Yeah.
The hope then that it actually does get taken up by somebody, considering the age of that fleet as well then. Okay, so we have to move on to another story, unfortunately, and very quickly, no cut in the interest rates later today. MPC decision at 3 p.m.
So we don't think there's going to be a cut today. We think there will be a cut throughout the year, but perhaps the MPC will hold off after the budget, because there are still quite a bit of risks when it comes to the rand and its volatility. There are still a few risk events coming up, and I think the budget being one of them, the possibility of a Moody's downgrade being another. Of course, if the rand weakens by quite a bit, it is inflationary, and they wouldn't want to cut rates prior to risk events like that. However, demand in the economy is extremely poor, and inflation has been well contained for some time. So I think there definitely is an outside chance for a cut today. Certainly one or two of the big banks are considering that a real option.
Chantel Marks, it's only the 15th of January, but so much to speak about and so little time, unfortunately. Happy New Year to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue having this chat, of course, as well as you continue to join us here on SABC News. Chantel Marks, portfolio manager then at FNB Wealth and Investment. After the break, we continue to unpack the business of the beauty industry. Stay with us.